Today's episode of the Ringer NBA Show is brought to you by Yahoo Daily Fantasy. Yahoo Daily Fantasy is coming out of All-Star Weekend hot. Every day, they're running a zero management fee fantasy basketball contest. That means Yahoo is making nothing on this contest and equals better odds for you to win. 1 in 5 people who play will at least double their entry fee. Tired of playing against people with 150 entries? Well, there's a limit of 10 entries per person, so don't miss these contests. Go to yahoo.com/dailyfantasy to play. Use promo code YAHOO25 when you make your first deposit for $25 in free play.
Basketball is very good. The Wizards underpaid John Wall. AD should re-sign with the Pelicans. The Nets actually won the Celtics trade. Basketball is very good.
Hello and welcome to the Ringer NBA Show. This is the group chat. I'm Justin Verrier, and joining me today, special guest from the internet, Haley O'Shaughnessy. And also, Paolo Uggetti.
What's up?
I kind of want to start doing this in the SNL voice. You know how they always do those intros?
Sure.
Musical guest, Bobby Wagner.
That is pretty good.
That's really good.
I knew exactly what you were talking about right away.
Yeah,
I put too much thought into this. I think is the only takeaway there.
How, did you practice that?
In my head, yeah.
Okay. That's good.
Not in front of the mirror yet, but we can do that later. Guys, basketball, it's happening still in the regular season. We're winding down here. What is it, about a month left to go? April 10th, I believe. Is the end of the season, but there's still some drama going on. We still can't get rid of the Lakers, even as they slowly descend into chaos.
Percentage-wise, we have gotten rid of the Lakers,
right.
But in all other
facets,
we cannot get rid of the Lakers.
They're just the gift that keeps on giving.
It has been quite the season.
Right. I wanted to talk about last night because last night was weird. And I said this to Paolo before we got on. It was such a awkward event. Obviously, LeBron passed Michael Jordan on the all-time scoring list for 4th, I believe. It just didn't seem like anybody cared. At least from watching from afar. Paolo, you were there. What was it like actually in the arena? It
was very strange in that just minutes ago, when the first quarter ended, they were booing the team because they were down already 17 or 20. So it was incredible how quickly they shifted from booing the team for missing free throws or just being down in general to, oh, right, we're going to stand up and cheer for LeBron because he just passed Michael Jordan on the point. It happened. It didn't happen right after each other, but it happened so closely together that the awkwardness was felt. And also, I think that it was tweeted out that it was a league decision not to stop the game per se, even though they kind of did pause a little bit. But it was so. I also thought that the way in which he got it was very emblematic, which was him driving to the basket, getting fouled, and making the shot. And him so you saw him and you sort of see him you can see the weight on him and the weight of not just passing Jordan, which obviously he raved about afterward and whatnot, but also just of what this season has been like for him. And yeah, it was just awkward. I mean, it was very. I think it was louder and there was a good cheer than maybe some people are making it out to be, but it was awkward in that it was sort of disjointed and it did feel like it could have been a bigger deal.
Yeah, it spoke to me just the difference between LeBron and the Lakers, this kind of division that still hasn't really that gap has not been closed, where LeBron still feels like he's a mercenary. And that he's almost playing on this team almost as if it were an all-star team where he just puts on the jersey and then goes home afterward. I think in particular, I've been struck by how much Los Angeles, in the city, nobody seems to care. I think we all anticipated that this would just be a big citywide thing where it would just almost change not our daily lives, but you would see it pretty often. I earlier before the season.
You mean LeBron being on the team in general?
Yeah, just that there would be a buzz, that you would be talking about it with people. Paolo wrote that thing before the season just about how there's all this graffiti that went up around the city. But I passed by one of those things every day on Melrose, and there's now graffiti within the numbers of LeBron that I guess that guy never filled the numbers. Yeah. It's just, I don't know.
Good graffiti or anti-LeBron graffiti?
I think it's just graffiti.
Just graffiti.
Yeah, I don't think it was making a statement. It was more like Bob. It's just somebody's name.
Shouts to Bob.
I don't know. It's just, it just feels disjointed, I guess.
Well, the Lakers are very much an NBA establishment.
Mm-hmm.
And LeBron is just as much an NBA establishment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the discord between their lack of success and him being the biggest factor for their success I think that also harms that, the Lakers fans' ability to celebrate something like this, something like him passing Jordan on the all-time scoring list. But it's also just not their accomplishment. It doesn't feel like their accomplishment, whereas if it was Kobe, it would feel like their accomplishment because Kobe is theirs. LeBron is very much his own person, has always been his own person. That's been the truth since he went to Miami.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it just doesn't feel like any fan base can have ownership over this except for the fan base that he's created, that he's done the best job of since, I wasn't around, in Jordan's prime, but his fan base is literally just LeBron fans.
Yeah.
And he has created this entire army of people throughout his career who will follow him wherever.
Right.
I followed him in Miami. I followed him back to Cleveland.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm still a LeBron fan, with him here in LA.
Same, yeah.
So it's just very much like for the Lakers fans, this is not theirs. This is his first year here. He has not gone well. There's been a lot of turbulence. And on top of that, like this guy is the most important factor for whether or not your team is successful.
Mm-hmm.
And not only on the court, it seems like he's had a hand in some of the things off the court that have gone wrong. That's just part of what we assign to LeBron is this extra pressure and almost blame. We've talked about it on here before. Like we all just kind of accept that he had some hand in the free agency, like process and opinions on like who they signed. We kind of all just assume that, right? And we really, he's never talked about that. He's never been like, I'm the one who seeks out these guys, or we go Magic and I go over it together. Yeah, we all kind of, give him some of that blame too. So off the court as well, he's just dealing with a lot of pressure from Lakers fans. And so I think that this accomplishment has been totally unappreciated and that hurts. But and history will probably remember it as a weird game, but they won't remember it specifically as like not as big of a deal.
Yeah, it's kind of like a rental car, if you will, where you're like, you need it for, you get it for a purpose, but like if it like crosses some sort of like mileage threshold, it's not, you know what I'm saying? Like I remember like when my car, like that I had it for a while, like crossed some like mileage threshold, and it was kind of cool. It was like, oh, like finally got to like 100,000 miles or whatever, right?
Did you pull to the side of the road?
Yeah, and took a picture of the odometer and the whole thing. Yeah, exactly.
Cameras on you.
You know what I'm saying? Like this is like, it's like they're renting something, right? They're renting an experience for a very utilitarian purpose, which is just to get a title again, or even to be relevant again. And obviously, if like Lonzo or Kuzma or Brandon Ingram end up getting some sort of milestone, which they're not. They're too young in their career to do, but just that's a different experience because the players were there from the beginning. It's kind of like how in, with the Sixers in the process, they're going to love Embiid to the death more so than any of the guys who eventually come in and put them over the top.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that they put the graphic up at a certain point where I think the top 4 scorers all time now have had Lakers stints. And now one of them was Karl Malone, who did, I believe, just the single year with the Lakers when they made that last push with the Kobe and Shaq pairing. I think LeBron right now is closer to a Malone than any of those other luminaries where it just feels like he's passing through, to your point. It felt very much like a 2019 experience. It just feels like, and we've been talking about this around the office, how LeBron is projecting one thing via his social media and another thing that's like actually on the court and the actual results don't match up. There's just like this, what LeBron wants to project to the world isn't necessarily truth. It's almost like he is an influencer now.
That's true. Yeah, it is much more positive than what's actually going on. He is posting a lot of his individual accomplishments. Most notably, he's posted 2 after losses. One was the Pacers loss, which was the worst loss in his 16 career season. They lost by 42 to the Pacers, and that's when he, I think, became the only player to be top 10 in assists and point totals over his career. But I also get it. I feel bad for him. Like, you've worked for this your entire career. You are hitting these milestones at 34. You're still very much like at full strength. Maybe we'll say this season he took a mini tiny step back, right? Because of the groin injury. And, there's even some speculation about whether he's fully healthy now, but he's still completely going and he's passing all these people on these lists. He's doing the same thing he's always done in his career, which is blow expectations out of the water at the earliest age, we usually ever see it. And he can't post an Instagram because the Lakers, because he's not winning, and he's got Lance Stevenson and JaVale McGee and 3 young dudes by his side. Here's the thing. Terrible for him because of that.
Okay, so he can do whatever. I personally don't care what he does on like social media. He can do whatever he wants. But at the same time, this was a choice he made. Like, he did choose to come to the Lakers. He did choose to have that team around him to a certain extent, because all the reports after free agency were that him and Magic had like sort of like come to this not agreement, but just this is what the team was going to look like. And I'm not saying it's his fault, because he's still like averaging a near triple double, but like there is some sort of thing where like this is sort of the bed you made for yourself, and now you're unfortunately like laying in the worst possible version of it, which is unfortunate because it's injuries, it's suspensions even at the beginning of the season or whatever. But like the given the whole AD saga and all of that, like it is sort of what you created.
No, that's true. I mean, you did sign on to a team. Like, players should think about the front office when they're signing or re-signing with the team, and he basically signed on with 2 guys who have no front office experience.
Yeah, he kind of always seems to want it both ways. He wants all the accolades, and he kind of wants to use the Lakers as a platform for various reasons, but at the same time, like, he's treating them like a vessel, and as a result, they went out and only signed 1-year deals. And it seems like, at the very least, based on the reporting, that he had some influence on like what types of guys they were looking for. Maybe he didn't specifically ask for JaVale McGee, although I'm pretty sure he went out and called Lance Stevenson. Sure. So it's kind of like he always finds a way to distance himself from the bad stuff and only promote the good stuff, which I guess is what's leading me to the influencer stuff.
Right. I think that's kind of fascinating, though, the point about how he's using the Lakers as a vessel, because that's, I think, what also gets at the heart of the disconnect that we saw last night between the fan base and him. Because the Lakers are an entity, like you said. They have so much history behind their team and so much legacy that clashing with another person of that level of legacy and of that weight is making this kind of the stalemate where LeBron's doing his own thing and the fans are like, well, if we were winning, we'd probably feel different and we adopt you quicker and whatever. But there is a weird sort of like gap within that's creating, I think, this awkward like vibe, if you will. And plus, like, LA, like, they're only going to root for people who win. Like, this is how there are the hardcore fans, which there will always be, and like, shouts to them.
And then there are the Clippers fans.
But for the most part, if they're winning, things are well. If not, then
I was thinking about something that we talked about a little bit yesterday, and how we all just assume that LeBron, because he's LeBron, will take them over their top and exceed expectations, and he has on an individual level. But I do wonder if this is maybe the end of things for like his career, and we just haven't come to accept it yet.
I know. I've been dreading that. I'll think about that in like moments when I'm not expecting to think about it, and it will just like fuck up the next like 15 minutes because
that LeBron is like perishing before our eyes.
It is kind of like watching it happen.
I honestly explained it to my dad the other day. Like, it's when you find out your parents aren't superheroes, aren't perfect. It really is. Like, this guy has shown me like the greatest athletic feats I've ever seen in my life, and one of those feats is continuing this elite level of play well into his 30s. I mean, for a basketball player, well into his 30s. He's 34.
Yeah. Being 30 isn't a bad thing.
No, it's not. It's not. We're talking strictly in terms of basketball performance.
Right.
But I think that that's what we're seeing. I just think that he simply cannot carry a team in the same way because of a number of things. One of those I don't think we talk about nearly enough is the fact that he's in the Western Conference. If he was in the Eastern Conference, I think this would have been a completely different season. I think it would have been practically identical to the Cavs seasons that he had the last.
I do wonder, should we hold that against him, though? The fact that,
but that's what Paolo's saying, is he chose that.
If he's in the Western Conference and he can't hang, That's a pretty bad mark because he is
a tough luck. But what I will say is that
he's hanging. He's the freaking last fingernail on the edge of the cliff, and everyone else is underneath him.
I'm just saying. I think the point is that it's hard to say should we, put it on him that he switches conference and doesn't make it. But I think it's a very weird season, partly by his own doing, but partly the groin injury. Like I don't think we can sort of just take that out of the equation and compare, LeBron with this Lakers roster and LeBron with the Cavaliers roster last year, which is not great either, I think the injuries to all the young guys, like last night, like Lonzo, Brandon Ingram, and Kuzma were all out. Like,
well, would all those guys be out if they were making like a legitimate playoff push, you think?
What do you mean?
I mean, like at this point in the season, I think people are a little more lax with what is an injury. Like Kuzma, maybe he'd miss a game, but he'll probably be like out for the rest of the season sort of thing.
That's a good point. But I'm just saying, like, I think that there were so many, like, literally this was a season for hell, not just for LeBron, but for the Lakers. And I think that should factor in.
I think that's fair, but I do think part of being like a franchise and a general manager is like assessing the risk.
Totally.
And like creating some sort of injury profile. And the thing we were saying going into this season was the pace plus Rajon Rondo, his age, LeBron's age, some of the other veterans, plus like the injury just scares that Lonzo has had throughout his career. There was a lot of risk here, and it just seems like the dice always came up against them.
Plus the amount of time LeBron had been on the court the year before. This guy played the most minutes of any NBA player last season.
Yeah.
At 33 and in the playoffs.
Right.
And a full playoffs.
So it took a heroic feat just to get the Cavs to where they were last year. You can't expect that to continue.
It's interesting. I wonder what would have changed this season the most. So if we like Mad Lib the Lakers and we took out like one thing and switched in something else, maybe a more experienced coach, maybe a front office that put its foot down, or a bench. I'm wondering,
honestly, I think it would be the groin injury because at that time they were actually looking pretty good.
Yeah,
like they
so
were.
I looked
they
last
were playing
night
well.
When he was out.
Yeah.
When he went down on Christmas, they were sixth in the standings.
Yeah, they were fine. They were
a
solid.
They were going to end up right there if
right
there's no injury and you replicate the 82 games that he played last season. I think. Even with all the other injuries, like I think they make the playoffs. So I think that's the biggest thing for me.
Injury. I mean, if we take out all the injuries too, like Lonzo's especially,
of course, yes.
I think it's something that I was listening when I was listening to the broadcast yesterday. I don't think we talk enough about how the things that now we take for granted all of a sudden from the Lakers, like we're no longer in awe of Lonzo's defense, which is like, fine because it's been a while since we've realized that like he can be a good help on defense. But at the same time, all of a sudden that is like the most important thing for their defense. The announcers are talking like it's make or break, which is like, whereas like his rookie season, we weren't even sure he could play defense.
It's been a really good like past month for Lonzo Ball. I feel like he's made out the best from this like terrible stretch that they're having because it realized like what, like it's hard to quantify like how he impacts a game, but it does feel like he has been missed. And I think that's big going forward, especially if you're trying to determine which of these guys you're going to ultimately get rid of. Because you're probably going to get rid of some of them at some point for a star player. Yeah.
I mean, I think that like LeBron and Rondo on the court is like a minus, I don't even know what, but it's not great. And so like imagine just putting Lonzo in the Rondo role more or giving more of those minutes, then it changes a lot of things, I think. And Lonzo and LeBron were playing really well off each other. So
can we talk about Rondo for a second? How our guy decided once he checked out of the game to sit closer to 2 Chainz than to Luke Walton or our guy Mo Wagner.
Yeah, but 2 Chainz gave LeBron a chain. Like, wouldn't you want to be near him just in case? Like he
had an extra one.
Look at
this.
He wasn't sure.
A third chain.
I was wondering, like, what would be harder for me to accomplish? Hitting over 32,000 points in a WNBA career that I haven't started yet, or like making enough money to one day afford one of those chains, and I still haven't decided. But 2 Chainz, if you're out there, if you're a group chat fan,
if you have 3 chains,
tell me what it takes.
For what it's worth, Rondo says that he has done that in other games this season. Like he apparently likes sitting in the courtside seats. Which
what?
I don't understand.
What does that mean? You're already courtside.
Yeah, I guess the fan courtside seats. I'm not out here trying to be defend. He says when they're open, he likes to go and set them.
Because he likes the perspective.
I have no idea. I'm just a messenger here. I don't agree with him. I don't. It's a weird thing. I just feel like I needed to say that because there was a quote that he had yesterday.
I have to say the camera work by ESPN was particularly good there because you could just hear the Curb Your Enthusiasm theme song being played as they zoomed out to get like the broad view of what was happening. Yeah. I don't know. Rondo does have a way of making a point without verbalizing it. And
sure.
It did seem like that, but I guess if he's done this before, it just brings up the point, like, why is he doing this to begin with?
Actually, remember that one picture where LeBron is like removed from the team?
Sure. That was during the 42-point loss to the Pacers.
Rondo was sitting in one of the courtside seats there.
Was he?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah, somebody tweeted out last night and you saw it. He's like on the other side of the bench.
Maybe one of these young Lakers just has like terrible BO.
Wow.
Like just awful. You know, they're young, like young guys and their hygiene. They don't really have it figured out yet.
I
Paolo?
I wouldn't.
Brought to you by Old Spice.
Here's my conspiracy theory.
Let's go.
Rondo is secretly laying the groundwork to ultimately take over as head coach.
Wow.
I cannot wait for when Rondo's a coach. I think he's going to be great.
I think he's going to be one eventually.
He has just the right amount of like constant resentment, but also he's very
for
encouraging.
Sure. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And like I feel attacked.
Wow, this has got real.
But it does seem like at some point we're going to have to replace Luke Walton.
At the beginning of the season, like when there was still hope and people were happy, like Rondo was like up from his seat and like sort of coaching guys on the floor. So yeah, there you go.
Coach on the floor.
Yeah.
That's great. But do we think, well, I guess we don't think that Rondo's going to be a good coach for the Lakers next season, but do we think perhaps someone else would do a better job with the Lakers than Luke Walton has done?
What do you mean? Yeah, of course.
I don't know if that's true.
Luke Walton
he's a nice guy. I like Luke.
I'm not going to be the good guy.
If it takes 15 seconds to explain their offense, like, no.
No, they don't have, like...
Next.
He's complete... Like much like the young players on the team, he has had trouble, like, adjusting to what has happened when you add LeBron to a team and all that comes with that.
And you wonder how assertive he would be if he was going into his third year with a coach and he didn't have the lights, that follow having LeBron James and then actually having LeBron James in the huddle.
Mm-hmm.
And Rondo to some extent. But yeah, it's not going to happen for him here.
He needs to go coach another young up and coming team and sort of like, because he would do well with that. He works well with young players. It's just the situation like went like 80 miles an hour and he was still trying to go like 35, It's just like, it's not going to work.
Yeah, if he was a good coach for last year's Lakers. He's just not particularly suited probably to coach a LeBron team. But I do think as we're looking at potential like replacements, I often find that they should find a guy who can satisfy the young players more than LeBron. Because if we're just saying that LeBron is this constant, you can kind of stick him into any situation. I think what they actually need is just better player development. I think what they need is guys who could like find the best in Kyle Kuzma, maybe activate him a little bit more on defense to say to Lonzo Ball, like, this is how we're going to use you in unique and creative ways. I don't know. I often
hire a shooting coach even.
Maybe that would help. It feels almost like you need like the next spread offense and like the Sean McVay type rather than some sort of hard nosed Tom Thibodeau type.
Yeah, you almost sort of need like the dream coach made in a lab that can do that with the young guys, but also like have the respect from LeBron,
Right.
And I don't know who that is.
Do we think that Jason Kidd, because he's the guy that keeps getting brought up, would be that?
I think that'd be a disaster.
I will say, out of the options that have been floated out there, he's not as bad as some other options.
He's really not. Like I wrote about this, all the names that have been mentioned or just, in relation to him. And a lot of them are just, past guys who have been associated with him, who have flamed out of the league as coaches for reasons, There's also Ty Lue, and that's interesting, but I just don't think it's right for the situation. I think that they need someone who is proven as a developmental coach, like you said, but not proven to the degree that he can't take a step back. They need the perfect mix for a LeBron team. My dream is Calipari.
Jeez.
That would help recruiting. That would help the recruiting. That would help their development. LeBron could still run stuff in-game because Cal's not a good in-game coach. But seriously, you need someone who's going to unite people, but is also like an adult.
What do they call Cal's offense? It's basically just attack from the wings. It's motion or like dribble drive. I forgot what it was, but it was just like a fancy word for just attack and don't shoot threes.
It's very difficult, and that's why I think this is sort of an impossible situation for whoever comes in there, because you're trying to do those two things at once. And to win with a LeBron-led team, you have to sort of systemize around him, which is sort of what the Cavs did.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is that because the roster is not, some sort of like veteran type players and sort of it's more young guys trying to build up, you do have to give them also an identity of sorts and a system. So those things are constantly going to be clashing. So I don't know what the solution. I mean, the solution here is you trade everybody for Anthony Davis.
Yeah, that's the caveat is that like you don't really need a developmental coach when you trade all these guys away.
Right. You probably need to pick your coach based on who would be best with Anthony Davis than LeBron James.
Do you though? Is that going to happen? Like,
well, I think I think we are getting to a point where if Kyrie leaves and the Celtics look at their roster and it's like, do we trade everybody for Davis and then just get left with a year with Davis? There's a lot of risk involved there. I think there is a non-zero possibility where they don't get in the mix for Davis because it just doesn't make sense long term, and all of a sudden the Lakers package is the best one. I also think Brandon Ingram has played well enough to, I guess, get into the Tatum zone.
He's done them a favor.
Yeah,
he's
done
them
a
huge favor.
He's been really good.
Bobby wants me to point out that LeBron does not have any established relationship that we know of with Cal, but he does with Coach K, which you and I were talking about, Justin.
Right, yes, because you wrote about this
But
on
Coach
the site.
K is not leaving college. Where I think that Cal would is because now the age might change. Everything might change with the NCAA. One and done might be no more, which is really like, I'm sorry, dude. That's all he has anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great point.
Whereas Coach K could revert.
Right.
He's a good enough coach.
I like the idea of Mike Brown coming back and in his post-Warriors sort of era now.
Although the Cavs hired Mike Brown right before LeBron left, and we're stuck with Mike Brown and then got rid of him pretty quickly.
That is true. I feel like LeBron would respect Mike Brown, though, for one.
Yeah,
and also, like I said, just sort of being around the Warriors, not that they're going to play like the Warriors, but there's something you must learn through osmosis there that should help you with your next job. And I think that would, if I had to pick one among this bunch that we listed, I mean, Monty Williams is kind of interesting too, but I just don't know if that's even in the picture.
The list Paul was talking about, which we have down, is Jason Kidd.
Monty would be great.
Ty Lue, Mark Jackson, Mike Brown, Jerry Stackhouse, who played with LeBron briefly in Miami, only 7 games. Monty Williams, Earl Watson, who's a clutch client.
I love that.
Juwan Howard, also a Heat guy.
Let's start
Jerry
that
Stackhouse
rumor
is
here.
good. But
Jerry Stackhouse?
But he's just like, he's coming up still from like he's an assistant with the Grizzlies now, and he was with the Raptors G League. So I don't know if that's, something you want to try to do.
I know that Jason Kidd has been kind of, it's become almost like a little bit of a joke now.
Yeah, but where just said, recently I saw that someone said they thought he was coming back into the league soon.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Let me look it up.
I think he kind of gets a bad rap. I think he had a bad end to his Milwaukee Bucks tenure, but I think leading into that, he was kind of one of the he was the young, smart guy in the mix. He made that Nets team. He went small at a time when people weren't really going small. He encouraged Giannis to like embrace his freakishness.
Well, he recognized that Giannis should be allowed to do his thing.
Yeah.
For all that the Bucks offense was just a disaster, he was very much like not trying to get in the way of letting him run transition offense and do what he does best and capitalize off of it. And when you have someone who can do something like that, it's at least a positive to see that he's not trying to put something around him. With that being said, he also then couldn't do anything with any of his teammates.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about that is that you look at a coach like Mike Budenholzer who comes in and sort of establishes that system. That's a system made for the modern NBA, and that Jason Kidd couldn't do that or didn't even think about doing that.
And defense
it's an indictment, I think, in terms of like how he wants to figure out the Lakers. I mean, they're just such a confusing team, obviously, because we don't know what they're going to look like in a year, but also because they just have so many conflicting things right now about like stylistically that I don't even know how you would go about coaching them. Like, how do you do that?
Would you trade a first for Pop?
Oh gosh,
I would trade anything for Pop.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he used to be at Pomona, which is in the area.
Pop?
Yeah.
Pomona's not in
Pomona,
the area.
Pomona College?
It's like far. It's
compared to like San Antonio.
Okay, sure.
Like he could take like a weekend trip to go like sip some wines with his former assistants or something like that.
All right, yeah, sure. Why not?
Local connection. We do it all the time with like Kawhi and some of these free agents.
Sure.
Like
Kawhi like buys a house in San Diego, and we're like, he bought a house in LA.
Right, which is
Southern California,
several hours away.
To be honest, that commute is like still shorter than Paolo's.
Touche.
That's true. All right, that's enough about talking about the Lakers. We're going to get into some other teams in the second half of the show, just kind of teams that are kind of making some noise coming down the stretch here. But first, I want to talk about tonight's games. It's a really interesting slate. There's only 2 games tonight. It's starting off with the Pacers and the Bucks on TNT at 5 p.m. Pacific. It's a really interesting one just because I've been fascinated by the Milwaukee Bucks here. I think that they've proven, despite all of our kind of concerns and criticisms, that they are legit. And I wonder if we're going to look back on the situation and they're going to be kind of a sleeping giant, sort of like the Warriors were before they took off. And then the Pacers, they've slowly kind of and quietly kept hold of that 3 seed, even though the Sixers kind of loaded up at the deadline and the Celtics obviously have all this talent. So I think it's a really interesting clash of 2 teams kind of differently constructed, but interesting in their own ways. So, and that's tonight at 5 p.m. Pacific on TNT. We're going to make that our watch of the night. And remember, if you want to watch every NBA game, subscribe to NBA League Pass on NBA.com or your local cable or satellite provider. Today's episode of the Ringer NBA Show is brought to you by Desus and Mero, the all-new weekly late-night talk show that's available now on Showtime. Tune in to watch the Bronx's own Desus Nice and the Kid Mero bring their illustrious take on current events, politics, sports, and pop culture, all while talking spicy with the week's hottest celebrity guests. Quick-witted and fun, the duo will riff off the cuff and get the Twitter sphere buzzing. New episodes of Desus and Mero drop every Thursday at 11 p.m. only on Showtime. All right, we're back. We're going to talk about some other teams that aren't the Lakers for once. There's this kind of shtick on the Orlando Magic broadcast that myself and Danny Chow, my office mate, like to kind of talk about, and it's called "Is This Anything?"
I love it.
And it's basically they put something up there and they just talk about it, and that's it. We're
gonna get a clear decision at the end. Is it like yes or no? Is this anything? Or is it more?
We don't have to be that concrete.
Okay, all right.
I want to explore all the different permutations. Yes, shot blocking. Is this anything?
Yeah.
But no, you guys have been writing about a lot of the other non-LeBron teams, so I feel like this is a good opportunity to kind of get a glimpse of where the league is as we reach this final stretch. The big one is probably the Warriors have hit a little bit of a skid here. They've lost 3 of the past 4. DeMarcus Cousins, believe it or not, does not look good on defense. I don't know. Is this anything?
Wow, we're just taking the bit. All right. No, of course it's not anything because they're going to win the title.
Okay, can I stop you right there?
Wow, you were ready for this.
No, because this has been percolating for me. I think that I'm a little fatigued with Warriors fatalism. This idea that like
I am too,
something can't get in their way. Just in the last conference semifinals, they had to go to a game 7 with one of the best rosters in history.
Yeah. No, that's fair. And I do think that we are not thinking about the possibility enough of like, this is how the end of the beginning of the end happens, you know, with like adding DeMarcus and being like, oh, we're like 5 All-Stars now. And
we're not thinking about that enough.
What I'm saying is that we're maybe not giving enough thought to that possibility of that.
Yeah.
Like I'm agreeing with Justin. Like I do like
inevitable.
Personally, if you ask me like to like bet money on it or whatever, like I would say like, yeah, the Warriors are going to win the title. But yeah, I mean,
Paolo's saying that we all die eventually.
Yeah, it all ends, dude. It all ends. It will soon be over. Yeah, I don't know. Like, there's just a lot of weird things happening with like the way that it feels to watch a Warriors game now too, which is like sometimes at least lately, like they just seem a little disinterested, which feels normal. But I think in the context of the way the season was sort of sold to us, if you will, was like, oh, Boogie's going to come back and they're going to be energized and they're going to just rip through the second half of the season.
Yeah.
That hasn't really happened.
And to that point, Anthony Slater had a piece that went up after that Celtics loss, and Anthony Slater works for The Athletic. I think he's one of the best beat writers in the country. And it was basically like he was pointing out that Steph said something like, we should kind of be better than this now. This is the point of the season where we should really be engaged and start showing like incline and defensive efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
And his point was basically Steph doesn't really say things just to say them. And I think that's really important.
Whereas, like, that's kind of been different with Steve Kerr, who has dropped certain words and moods to the media before with very clear purposes. Mm-hmm. And you guys know I went to Louisville. Rick Pitino used to do this all the time. There's just certain coaches who will say things to the media on purpose so your players will hear them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whereas, and so Kerr is one of those coaches. That came up very recently after the Celtics loss. When a reporter asked Kevin Durant about their anger or lack of anger. And Kevin Durant was just, I'm so over him.
He was very prickly. And we should probably point out that the person who asked that was Ethan Sherwood-Strauss, who Kevin Durant went at in full force a couple weeks ago because Ethan's writing a book and Ethan wrote a story that was kind of hinting at how Durant is kind of checked out because there might already be like this groundwork to where people assume he's going to New York.
Right. And then it's like, of course, the way to show people you're not checked out is to be super grumpy about what your coach is saying.
Right.
I don't remember the exact question that he asked, but Durant's answer was, I thought we move off of joy. Now anger. I disagree with that one. Saying he disagrees with what Kerr was saying about what they were missing or.
Right. Well, the thing is like, I think Kerr was talking about specifically about playing with anger on defense. And then the way Durant took the question was more like, oh wait, I thought we were supposed to play with joy, but now we want to play with anger. So it's like, how do those things come out? Which is like a very needlessly petty kind of sort of response.
It doesn't matter what. That's why like it doesn't even matter what the quote was, what the word was, what Kerr was saying about if they need joy or if they need anger or what they need. Because if you're saying that they need some emotion, at the end of the day, you're saying that we're not playing with enough.
Yeah, which is very clear when you watch them as of late.
Right.
And so your response is to publicly have attitude with what your coach is saying and then be upset with the media when they're implying that there's some kind of discord or that you've checked out.
Yeah. I think if you watch the video of it, it does seem like Durant is only just trying to dunk on Ethan, which I love Ethan. I think he's great at what he does, but like it just very clearly seems like there's some discord there that's coloring a lot of what's going on.
I think it's really funny that recently it's been so much of Durant and Kyrie being so pissed about everyone talking about where they are going that they're just only drawing more attention to themselves. Yeah. It's kind of, have you guys ever seen that episode of The Office when Aaron and Andy start dating and they don't want anyone to know and they go to like a happy hour or something and they keep yelling about it being private and they start like making out with other people so nobody knows that they're dating but nobody's checking on them dating? Yeah. That's exactly what this is with their Knicks free agency rumors.
Right, yes.
Exactly. I mean, it's such a good point because they don't have to be
this public
leaning into this, right? They're by trying to lean away from it, they're leaning into it more. It's so weird because like they could just be like, well, I'm focused about our season here and like tonight's game or whatever, blah blah, and that's all I'm going to talk about. And it's like, okay, and then what happens is that it doesn't build up to get to a point where we look at them interacting after a game and sort of like all read into it. Mm-hmm. Like, you know what I'm saying? This is not a one-off kind of thing. It's like this has been building up because of the way they have treated the situation.
Right.
Yeah, and just speaking about like the remainder of the season into the playoffs, I would argue that DeMarcus Cousins in particular should not play with any emotion, like less emotion that he has been playing with, because he just gets mad at guys and it completely derails the situation. And I think this is what we were worried about going into this whole Cousins experiment. It went really well from the start. Cousins played like the all-star self, especially on offense. It just looked like they were going to be unbeatable as soon as he got back. But now all of a sudden you're starting to see all the complications that come along with Cousins, He's picking up the technicals. He's arguing with people. He's shoving people. And on defense, it seems like it's really derailing there. Draymond stood up for him and was basically like, it's not a Cousins issue. It's an all of us issue. And I think there is some truth to that. But I think there are specific things that they need to do in order to cover for Cousins that I don't think you want to be doing at this point in the season. To Steph's point, you should be like finding nuance and just really crossing the T's and dotting the I's. You shouldn't be trying to just work a guy into what you do.
You maybe shouldn't have the need to sign Andrew Bogut.
Exactly. You shouldn't. Well, I think that the solution to not letting Cousins, the off the court attitude, like whatever those kind of issues affect the team is not needing him as much. Mm-hmm. But they just signed Bogut. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like they're obviously like, he shouldn't be that important to your team because then that does play into it.
Yeah, Bogut was in Australia.
Then all of a sudden,
season's over.
Yeah, season's over. All of a sudden you have Draymond, who at certain times has been unhappy with the team this season. Durant, who at certain times has been unhappy with the team this season. Whatever is going on with Boogie. Clay, who is a free agent this summer. And likes dogs. Yeah, just chilling. And then you have Steph, who's like, I think that we should probably do a little examination on what's going on here.
Yeah, Steph's, I guess, the adult in the room.
Yeah,
is the way that could be read. I don't know. I think obviously there's a lot of good there, but I think there are certain things that you do, like you pull the thread a little bit and all of a sudden it doesn't look as solid
for sure
as it should be. I think that the main concern I had with the Cousins signing to begin with is it does feel like they are one injury away from being like a little too close to the edge. We saw that last postseason where Iguodala doesn't seem right at times. Steph obviously has a tendency to get little dings. And you just don't have the wing depth that you probably should have. And now you're looking at a Jacob Evans or some of these other guys that would need to step up. And it's just like, that's not the position you want to be in.
Depth's always been their trade-off.
Yeah.
And it will be that way until this dynasty ends. Well, because they simply can't afford to have depth with the stars that they've signed.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as the dynasty has gone along, that seems to be getting worse because now we have to pay guys and whatnot, but also just like it's sort of harder to fit guys in, especially on a short timeline, like with Bogut, like how they're going to try to do with Bogut. But yeah, I mean, like,
yeah, what kind of minutes do we seriously see Bogut getting?
No, I mean he's like 10.
Yeah, I mean they were looking at Robin Lopez too before, but he never got bought out. So I do think they need like a big to toss in there. But it does feel like
they're so wrong for that. They're so wrong.
No, I respect it.
You respect it?
Bulls have been feisty lately.
Look, if Robin was like, I want to get out and like, please, like he hasn't said that though. I don't believe.
I know.
Has he?
Before the trade deadline.
Was trying. Yeah, his agent was trying.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah.
He probably would like to play for the Warriors.
He took less minutes for them as they were trying to figure out their young players.
I respect not getting the buyout though, because I always see guys like taking a pay cut in order to go chase money. I'm like,
I think Pat Gasol like $2 million on the table.
I'm not doing that. Like the Spurs are like a perfectly fine team. You're gonna go like one round deeper into the playoffs.
I think that was a mutual.
Wow, some shade. There's some inadvertent shade at the Bucks right there.
I've seen a lot of things, and I wonder why more people aren't talking about that being something that actually helped the Spurs too.
Oh, that they just don't have to pretend to give minutes to Paolo.
Yeah.
Well, now they also have $2.5 million.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, more minutes for Jakob,
our guy.
I don't
know. Great stuff. Let's talk about the team on the other end of that Warriors loss to the Celtics. It seems like things are a little bit better. They seem better, especially when Kyrie sits like he did the other night against the Kings.
Which is like, is it better? Because my guy's going to come back. And
well, is this anything?
I mean,
is this anything?
But specifically, I want to talk about Gordon Hayward.
Wait, let's all go through and say if we think the Warriors struggling is anything. I'm going to say no.
I'd say yes.
I would say no.
Okay.
Because I believe that we should focus on the negatives constantly. Gordon Hayward.
So on brand.
Is he back? He's been
back
fine
enough to where he's like not terrible. How's that?
Are we just gonna act like he almost didn't throw the game last night?
Yeah,
by fouling Buddy.
Right. So he fouled Buddy Hield for 3, which put them in a really bad situation.
Buddy Hield. He makes all 3. Just amazing. Just amazing.
Gordon Hayward he hit the game winner.
Yes.
Then on the other end, Gordon Hayward, I think, brought it down the length of the court and hit a fall away for the go-ahead bucket.
This is good because it's
Great,
confidence
great game
building. You know
It
what I'm
is.
saying?
Yeah.
Like that's all. It's not really about. Personally, I think the Celtics are like like them being the 4th or 5th seed in the East, 3rd, 4th, or 5th seed is like the exact kind of team they should be. There's way too much sort of like fluctuation to think about them as like a top 2 team in the East. But I think that if they're in that 3 to 5 range, that's who they should be. But
so you're saying that they should lean into the nobody believes in us sort of thing that spurred them last year.
I don't even want to say that. I'm just saying like we need to stop like projecting them as like the team we thought they would be before the season.
I see.
Like this is just who they are. So let's focus on now, which is Hayward gaining confidence and then maybe being a factor in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I think, so last night when he was doing the post-game interview, I asked the question in Slack, like when's the last time he did a post-game interview? And I don't know what happened after the Warriors win.
So kind of the on-camera walk-off interview?
That is very much like that. Even those little things are confidence boosters.
Mm-hmm.
They are picking you as the player of the game, player that won the game. And the more those things start to happen to him again, I think also will play into him getting his confidence back. But I just think there's like such an obvious ceiling on it.
Yeah, it does seem like at times that he's hesitant, and I guess I would be too if like you had that pretty tragic fall, and I wonder if he's hesitant toward contact or what it is specifically. He's also, as I wrote in our outline, a bit of a thick boy now, like looking a little too hefty, and I wonder if it's the type of thing where he worked too much, he worked out too much, got too big. And it almost seems got too swole and almost isn't as fluid of an athlete as a result.
There are a couple thick boys on the Celtics.
Yeah.
Marcus Smart.
Well, I mean,
thick team.
Yeah.
Thick team. Sure. I guess like in Boston, like what are you going to do in the winter? Just working out
clam
and
chowder, baby.
Eating clam
working
chowder.
out in sweatshirt cutoffs, headbands.
That's what my life was like in New England.
There you go.
Eating clam chowder.
So much clam chowder.
I don't really know anything.
I'm out of clam chowder.
I don't know anything else.
A lot of
people in
Chipotle.
Boston do.
Yeah.
Well, Connecticut only has so many things.
I mean, granted, these are professional athletes who probably have chefs.
I don't know if I totally get what you're saying in terms of like he worked out too much and then.
Well, I think he's carrying too much weight, and
Like,
I
he's
think
not
it's starting
light
to
enough.
it's starting to affect his performance.
I'm really not sure. I can't differentiate between if that's what makes him look restrictive or if he's actually just kind of a hesitant guy now on the court.
I think it's a lot.
But there's definitely a difference. But I'm not sure so much if he doesn't seem as light, but he also doesn't seem as aggressive, which kind of makes him seem a little bit heavier.
Yeah, he lacks the explosiveness he's had sort of built for himself in Utah. You know what I'm saying?
It's explosiveness, and you're also like, but are you just timid?
Well, I think it's a combination of being timid and then being like, maybe like fully physically like there.
Right. Even that, I mean,
strength-wise, just strength-wise, because he's healthy, but just strength-wise, I think, and I think that's maybe where sort of the thickness come in, that he's like, he looks a little softer because he's just like kind of this like, this person who like lacks confidence and doesn't have that strength. So.
I think I'm speaking specifically of going into the season. He had this interview where he did that documentary. You remember this? Like it was like a multi-part documentary with, I believe, The Athletic, and he was basically like, "I'm not going to be the same player." And he says, "I'm going to be a different player." And I think part of that, he admitted like he put on some weight. I don't know. Maybe it's just he looks different in green too. There's also that possibility. Sure. Might be the eyes playing tricks on you. But I don't know. I guess the overall point is, well, other than the fact that I just wanted to use the word thick a bunch of times, he's kind of the inflection point with them. He does seem like he is, he's either going to take them farther than we assume they're going to go at this point, or he might potentially drag them down. And
it's been but that's very much Brad Stevens' decision to make him a potential X factor. You know what I mean? He's still put that on him. It's kind of what we said all season. Like, he had a chance to pick certain guys who it seemed to be working for, and he still kind of decided to experiment with everyone. So now, he is. Sure. He could be their X factor. I just wouldn't.
Yeah.
This
kind of goes back to your Ben Simmons thing, where you just don't want people to experiment during the regular season.
God, we do not need to get into that again. Still don't understand the take, by the way.
Oh, I just realized what you're talking about.
Great.
Well, we'll talk about it after.
All right. But I guess in a first round series with the Sixers.
No.
No? No bueno?
I would lean Sixers if only for the talent. They have more talent. I think top end talent.
So we're basically saying that the Celtics are a first round out?
I'm saying we should not be closed-minded to that possibility. Open your mind. That's what I'm saying.
Right. All right. Let's move on here. Haley, you wrote about the Mavericks last night.
Yes.
And how close they're getting to the edge of just tanking infamy right now.
Yeah.
Yes, which is so interesting. So right now, after a loss to the Wizards, the Mavericks have the 7th worst. So let's say that they're in the 7th lottery spot, 7th worst record. So in the 6th spot is the Grizzlies, who just beat the Mavericks. And also, they have to play twice again. They play their third to last game and their fourth to last game are both against the Grizzlies. So if the Mavericks can move into that spot and kick them out, they move up to having a 29.4% chance of landing a top 4 pick.
Pretty good.
Which means that they keep their pick that they traded to Atlanta over the summer that was top 5 protected as part of the deal that got Luka Doncic, which would be insane.
Mm-hmm.
That would be, so then they would also have to give, instead, it's not like then they would just get the pick. They would give Atlanta their 2020 first round pick, but that's also top 5 protected. So it's just kind of interesting. The best part of this all to me is that last year, Mark Cuban was the most open owner about tanking. He said on a podcast that they were tanking and that he told members of the team why it was best for the team, which is something that a line that we usually don't think gets crossed, right? We always assume that it is ownership and the front office making decisions that will directly affect how well the roster can play and how it can perform. But we never think that an owner is telling coaches to throw a game or why it's best that they sit.
The assumption is always that it doesn't trickle into the locker room.
Right, because that's not how these guys who have made their careers being competitive operate. So anyway, last year he got in trouble for saying that he was tanking, that was his mission on purpose
to Dr. J, I believe.
To Dr. J on Dr. J's
That's
podcast.
Right there.
Yeah, it's an important detail.
and that's part of, I mean, that's not Cuban directly, but owners with Cuban's mindset are why the NBA knew for a long time it had to reform the lottery. And so it did last year. And it flattened the odds out. And so it said, look, you can lose all you want, but even if you lose the most in the league, there are no guarantees anymore, right? Yeah. Or there are less guarantees of certain spots. Okay. And now because of those flattened odds, the Mavericks, who are not the worst record or the second worst record or the third worst record, have a chance of keeping their pick in what was probably the best draft night trade.
I see what you're saying, but like,
if they get their pick back, then that is
it's a huge win.
No, yeah, for sure. I don't. So they have to get into the top 5.
Dallas is now tied for the 7th worst record, right? Giving the team a 29.4% chance of landing a top 4 pick. Okay, but if it bumps Memphis, then the odds of keeping its pick go to 37.2%. That's almost 40%.
Yeah. No, that's pretty good. Yeah.
It's pretty good.
For a team that has such a bright future ahead of them, that's insane. That echoes like what we were talking about with Boston last year.
Right. And I think the larger point that's kind of interesting to me about the flattened odds, and I think Daryl Morey talked about this on Zach Lowe's podcast, was just like, that is kind of at least eliminated like the hardcore tanking of like,
except for the Knicks,
but trying to get to that, like between those three teams that are there, Knicks, Suns, and Cavs, it really doesn't matter, right? What order they're in, they're all going to have the same odds. So at least on that sense, I think it's like worked in a weird way. There seems to be this like momentum that like the worst teams aren't as bad, even though the records are still pretty bad. I would push back on that slightly, just because the Cavs have clearly just jettisoned every useful thing except for Kevin Love, who was hurt, and they couldn't even do that. Right.
The Knicks have completely bottomed out, and the Suns, whether or not it was conscious or not, have just been completely incompetent.
Right. Well, to be clear, this is like sort of like a a Band-Aid. It's, you know what I'm saying? It's not really like, I personally don't feel like it's like a long-term
I think
solution.
it's going to take us a couple of years to see how it plays out with the teams in the middle, like the Mavericks.
Yeah.
And the Grizzlies, who, seem to just, I don't know if you want to say decide earlier. Well, yeah, we can say that because they traded Marc Gasol earlier, that it was in their best, they weren't going to push for it anymore.
Right.
So it depends, like now are teams going to make that decision earlier? Teams that maybe wouldn't have had the incentive to lose so hard before.
Yeah, I think it's one of the criticisms of the new system when it first came out was that maybe it chilled tanking in the very lowest parts, which, if we're being completely honest, is probably all the NBA wants to avoid, the black eye of teams just like winning 10 games a season, for instance.
Right.
But what seems to be happening is it just moved the tankers up a level. So now you have a team like the Mavs trying to get into that 4, whereas otherwise, I don't know if they would try to run for to push for the playoffs, but at the very least, maybe they wouldn't be trying to bottom out.
Right. There will always be a big benefit.
I do not think that the Mavs are tanking.
Yeah, I mean, they're still trying to
But now I think they definitely should.
I think it was implicit in the move they made for Kristaps. I think it was baked into that. It's like, if you're going to give Kristaps and not play him, you're not going to win games.
There's kind of an acceptance that like, we're just going to do this next year.
Yes.
Which is, I mean, that's kind of interesting because that's also the line is, when it isn't up to your players and your coaches and it's kind of the front office decisions, what is tanking and what is just saying this isn't our year. Mm-hmm. The line kind of fizzles. But I don't think that the Mavs are traditional hardcore Hawks tanking, but I think that now they definitely should. That would be the most remarkable full circle moment if they got this draft pick.
Yeah.
I mean, a top 5 draft pick in a trade that brought you Luka Doncic.
Yeah, I do wonder down the stretch if we'll start to see teams who just aren't going to make the playoffs. A team like Washington, let's see how hard they tank or how hard they put their foot on the gas in terms of like just.
I mean,
losing
Washington
games.
is really interesting because they are the place right behind Dallas, right?
Yeah.
Yet they are still making a push for the playoffs and very much could make it in the East. It's still possible.
It's still possible.
3 games back, I think. They're 2 spots back, 3 games back.
3 games, yep.
So that's kind of fascinating. Like you're closer to everything. It's just not, they aren't such polar opposites anymore.
Yeah. Well, I did say before that perhaps tanking it just moved up a level. It does seem like a lot of the teams in that mix are still either going for it or remaining competitive. Even the Hawks have shown a lot.
I'd be interested to see how it affects pick protections in trades going forward if the Mavs can hang on to this.
That's interesting. Like maybe just top 3 instead
of
top 5.
Well, it just make you, it would totally make you rethink things.
Yeah, because there are a lot more teams, like you said, kind of still weirdly in that playoff mix. Not a lot if we're being like honest with ourselves, but like you said, teams that are competitive still.
Yeah. So before we go, I guess we have to answer the question. Is this anything?
Yes.
It's a thing.
Yes. For future implications for the Mavs and the league and the system and the reform. Paolo? And just Cuban getting the last laugh, which is so funny.
I think it's not a thing, but I don't think they're going to keep it. I don't think they're going to get the pick.
Yeah, if we're talking about will they actually keep the pick, I think it's.
I think
the odds are against them. But I think it's the right move. It's the
I don't think
decision.
they'll get both of those games against the Grizzlies, and that's kind of crucial.
There you go. Sit Luka.
Still get Luka, still get KP, have $30 million in cap space this summer.
Sit Luka is what I'm saying.
Sit Luka.
Sick Kleber. He's the guy there.
Yeah, Maxi Kleber.
Too many dunks.
Dwight Powell. Like all of them.
Dirk's.
Don't let Dwight Powell shoot any more threes. You know?
Dirk had this quote where he's like, "My kid really likes like Maxi Kleber and Dwight Powell because they dunk a lot." It's like,
it's a real come to Facebook.
Yeah, love dunks. All right, that's it for this week. For Haley, for Paolo, for Bobby, and for me. We will see you next week.
Basketball is very good. Basketball is very good.